Hello?
The new Dog Stars trailer shows exactly the kind of contradiction that can make a post-apocalyptic movie hit harder than expected. On one hand, it looks brutal. Armed survivors, collapsing trust, people racing toward airplanes while raiders close in, and a world that clearly never found its way back after civilization cracked apart. Ridley Scott has made enough iconic science fiction to fill half a film history class by himself. So he does not need to prove he can build worlds. He already did that with Alien, Blade Runner, The Martian, and more. What makes the Dog Stars immediately more intriguing is that it is not just returning to sci-fi. It is stepping into the post-apocalyptic survival space with a tone that seems harsher than The Martian, more emotional than Prometheus, and more grounded than some of the bigger genre spectacles Scott usually gets associated with. This trailer is basically saying, yes, there is action here. Yes, there are hostile survivors. Yes, there is danger in every direction. But underneath all of that, there is still a movie about grief, loneliness, and the stubborn refusal to let hope die quietly. That is a very strong lane for Scott. The trailer wastes no time framing Jacob Elordi's Hick, the emotional center of the whole thing. He is not introduced like a classic action hero. He is introduced like a man carrying a wound he never got the chance to close. He survived the flu pandemic, but he lost his wife, and you can feel immediately that survival alone has not healed anything. That matters because a lot of post-apocalyptic movies make the same mistake. They confuse being alive with having a reason to live. The Dog Stars looks more aware than that. Hig's search does not seem driven by macho conquest or by the usual I must save the world blockbuster engine. It looks driven by longing, by absence, by the need to believe that the world still contains more than ashes, routines, and defensive violence. That is what gives the radio signal so much power. A mysterious transmission is such a simple device, but in a story like this, it becomes everything. It is not just a plot trigger. It is the sound of possibility, the sound of maybe, the sound of a life that might still expand instead of just repeat. And the trailer smartly treats that signal like something dangerous and beautiful at the same time. The moment Hig decides to pursue it, the movie stops being just a contained survival story and becomes a riskier emotional journey. He is not merely leaving safety. He is challenging the logic that has kept him alive. In a broken world, hope can be as risky as any enemy. Josh Brolin looks perfectly cast as Bailey for exactly that reason. Every second of his presence in the trailer screams practical survival logic. This is a man built for distrust. A man who probably stayed alive because he assumes the worst first and asks questions later. That makes him a great counterweight to Hig, if Hig represents the part of humanity that still wants to reach outward. Bailey seems to represent the part that knows how expensive that instinct can become, and that tension is much more interesting than a simple friendship dynamic. It gives the film a genuine philosophical conflict. Is it smarter to close your world down and defend what little you have left, or does that strategy slowly kill the very thing you are trying to preserve? The trailer never says that out loud, but it is all over the footage. Margaret Qualley's Chimu adds another layer that could make the film work on more than just a survival thriller level. The trailer positions her as both emotional warmth and medical practicality, which is a smart combination. She is not just there to be a love interest. At least, the trailer is careful not to reduce her to that. She feels like part of the world's remaining moral infrastructure, someone who helps keep other people alive and, by doing that, keeps some version of civilization alive too. If Hig is chasing a signal because he wants to believe there is still something out there, Chima seems like the kind of person who reminds him that something worth protecting is already right in fronto. F him! That kind of triangle between hope, caution, and tenderness could be what gives the Dog Stars its real depth. Then there is the thing the trailer very deliberately leans into: war between survivors. That is where the movie starts looking bigger and meaner than a quiet adaptation of Peter Heller's novel might have suggested. The raiders, the chase, the horseback threats, the rush toward the plane, the sense that any functional refuge can be destroyed at any moment. All of that gives the film real propulsion. But what I like is that the action does not seem disconnected from the emotional stakes. Too often in this genre, human conflict feels like a studio note. Add bad guys so the movie has more energy. Here, the violence looks like a natural extension of scarcity, fear, and the collapse of social trust. These people are not just fighting because action scenes look cool in a trailer. They are fighting because when the world ends unevenly, whoever is left behind still has to decide what kind of human being they are going to become. One of the most promising things here is that Scott does not appear to be making a purely miserable apocalypse. That may sound like a small detail, but it matters. There is a difference between a film that understands devastation and a film that becomes addicted to it. The Dog Stars trailer definitely sells danger, but it also hints at lyricism. Open skies, quiet valleys, the dog Jasper as a reminder of loyalty and routine. The emotional charge attached to the signal. Even Higgs' face when he seems to glimpse the possibility of something beyond his current life. All of that suggests Scott is trying to preserve the soul of Heller's novel, not just strip mine it for tension. That is the best case scenario. Because if this movie can really merge action, grief, tenderness, and that strange post-collapse beauty the book is known for, then it could end up being much more than another people dash with dash guns dash after dash the dash and dash of dash the dash world movie. The release date shifts do create some pressure. Whenever a film moves around, people start looking for smoke, and sometimes there really is fire behind it. But trailers like this help, because this does not look like a project drifting without identity. It looks like a movie that knows exactly what it wants to be. A post-apocalyptic survival story where action is the surface, but hope is the real battleground. If Scott delivers on that, then The Dog Stars could be one of those late summer films that sneaks up on people and leaves a bigger mark than the bigger franchise titles around it. The Dog Stars lands in theaters on August 28th, and based on this new trailer, I think the movie's biggest strength may be that it refuses to choose between violence and vulnerability. It wants the danger, the chaos, the chase, and the gunfire, but it also wants to ask whether a shattered world is still worth loving. That is a much harder question, and it is the one that gives this story weight.